If we can become 1% more efficient in an organization our size, that's 7 figures. If you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you have time to go back and do it again? The good guys have to be right every single time. We have to be 100% accurate every single time. Bad guys only have to be right once. They can fail 99.99% of the time. They make it one time and you're in trouble.
Welcome to the Las Vegas IT podcast, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Brad Sexton with Terribles, who is the current Chief Information Officer. How are you doing today, Brad?
I'm doing well. Shaytoya, how are you?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. I'm super excited to have you on our podcast today. But Brad, I would just love to get to know you a little bit better. Can you just tell us a little bit how you got started within that role?
Oh, geez. You're going to make me go all the way back. I actually got started in IT because I was frustrated. I was frustrated because I had to take this is how far we go back. I had to take an actual floppy disk and go over to one computer to print something. And I knew that you could do it, you could print from any machine. And so I went to our IT team and said, how do we do this? And they said, great question. It's not that difficult to do. We just don't have time to do it. But if you want to do it, we'll help you and we'll give you all the tools. And so that was my foray into IT, and I screwed it up multiple times. I had to recable, I can't tell you how many times, and finally got it to work.
Awesome. And then as the Chief Information Officer, can you just share with us a little bit about that role?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for the service delivery of IT across every part of the business. So most people know Terribles as a convenience store and gas station, car washes, but we actually operate 193 locations across 5 states, food and beverage locations, quick serve locations, with parking garage that we manage, taverns, slot routes, almost all the Albertsons and Vons, the gaming inside of those establishments are run by Terribles. So we have a pretty wide array of business ventures. And from an IT perspective, that's where myself and my team are responsible for that delivery.
Understood. So it sounds like you have is it a pretty large team that works underneath you, or how does that kind of look like?
Pretty diverse team. We're pretty lean. We manage a lot with the team we have. We rely on some key partners to help us in some cases, and the rest of our business units are very supportive of us as well. So it's a great environment for us. There's never a dull moment.
Got it. No, that's pretty cool. And then as the Chief Information Officer, what does your daily role look like?
Lots of email, lots of meetings. Because we have so many different things going on, lots of projects, break fix things happening, upgrades that we need to do. A lot of it is, coordinating with the different business units. I work very closely with my peers and the leaders within our business units to identify technology to help our business units, right? So looking for ways to use technology to be more efficient within our operations, to deliver new technologies, and to support the existing processes and procedures that we already have. So it's a lot of dealing with issues that happen right now and looking out, 1, 2, 3 years in the future, and how can we use technology and leverage technology to help the business grow and become more efficient.
Got it. And you said 2 to 3 years. So what are some of the ways that you guys are looking at technology, since it's ever changing, to make sure that you guys do that?
Yeah. So one of the things, there's a couple areas. First of all, one of the areas we're working on is, automating some of our more, I say routine functions, but it's critical to our operation. So a lot of our accounting functions, so helping automate getting invoices, receive them and pay them in an automated manner. Right now it's very manual for us, and there's technology that we have now that we just need to deploy and work better with. And so that's a huge project for us. It'll save a significant amount of time. It'll also improve the accuracy of our invoicing. And even if our CIO tells us this all the time, if we can become 1% more efficient in an organization our size, that's seven figures. Right. And so that's a huge accomplishment within our organization. So that's one. And then future looking, not only optimizing what we do now, but laying the groundwork from a technology perspective to allow us to continue to deploy new technology. My goal is to have a environment that allows my peers and our business leaders to, come to me and be able to say, I need this functionality. Okay, we already have the infrastructure to support it. Let's figure out what the right solution is and how to implement it, and how to integrate it into our system. But making sure that that infrastructure is there. And so one of the things that we're working right now, and I call it our unified data layer, but literally a platform or series of platforms that allows us to connect all the disparate systems that we have and collect all of that information in one area, right? It's like I say it's the universal connector, right? So when you're traveling overseas, you get this plug and it has all the different connector plugs and you can plug into it no matter what country you're in. It's that same kind of idea, except for data and from all of our systems. And so we're working through identifying potential platform or platforms that allow us to connect all that data, which then allows us to do a lot of different, then we can manipulate it, right? Then we can understand it. We have a data analytics team that, this platform would support very specifically and allow them to be able to have access to all the data that we have, right? And that's going to allow our organization to make better decisions faster, which ultimately is the key strategic goal of our organization.
Got it. While you were speaking, Brad, so many questions came to mind. One of the things that you did mention was automations. What are some of current ways that you guys are, setting that up with such an organization like yours? How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, so it takes time, right? It takes some diligence on our part to make sure that we partner with our business units and truly understand the processes that they're doing, whether they're manual or not now, and figure out ways. Does our current system allow us to automate any of these functions? So give me an example. About 6 months ago, we started the automation process of creating accounts for new employees, right? So the fact that, someone had to make a request, get to us, we had to manually create the account and all these different systems. And any part of that we could automate is going to make us more efficient, right? And so right now, our system will identify new employees 5 days before their start date, provide the manager information about what that individual's account will be, and allow them to make the request for access. Even though there's some of it that has to be done manually, allow them to make that request in advance so that when that person starts, they actually have all of the access they need to be productive day one. Right? In the 6 months ago, it was once they started, then we had to create all the different access. And so it could be 4 hours, it could be 2 days, depending on the amount of access and stuff that was necessary. So that's a huge automation function that just makes the business process flow faster.
Got it. And so when it comes to this automation, is there like one application that you guys are setting up so it makes it where, because in a business, I understand where there's times where, we're using multiple applications. So are you guys kind of setting it up where they're just using one, or like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, right now we're tied into our HRIS system. So, that's the source of record for us, right? When an employee starts with us, when they leave with us, their status as an employee is driven by our HRIS system. So we tied multiple backend systems and then built automation scripts to account for the variations. We're a multi-billion-dollar organization, right? 3,000 plus employees, all different kinds of types of employees. And so it's a fairly complicated process to identify, this employee needs this kind of access and this employee needs, X or Y type of access. And so we're continuing to bring our core systems into that automation process. Currently, it's our identity platform, right? So that's what's the core system that's connected. But we just got done tying in one of our analytics platforms that is going to automate that entire process as well, both provisioning, creating an account, and deprovisioning, disabling one when someone's gone. So it crosses multiple different systems, and we have a list of other applications within our environment that we're continuing to work on. And as we bring them into single sign-on, which is the platform for us, when I tie them into single sign-on, it actually ties into this automation process at the same time and allows us the ability to be able to dynamically provision and deprovision accounts through multiple different applications. So it's an ongoing process. And as we bring on new systems, that's one of the requirements. It needs to be support our implementation of single sign-on so that, they come on from the very beginning and built into that automation process.
Understood. And then when it comes to other, business owners, a lot of the listeners on this podcast are business owners, techs. So what are some other technologies that they can personally use? Maybe they're not as big as Terribles, but they can help their business be, become more automated and make their business help their business grow.
You know, I, I've thought about this one for a little while. I think that, and it's interesting because our daughter and son-in-law are business owner as well, right? They own a small business here in town, and one of the things that has truly helped them significantly in just managing their day-to-day business is having access to cloud-based productivity suites, right? So Microsoft Office, the G Suite of platforms, being able to access your information and your critical systems information from your phone, from a tablet, while you're on the car, while you're on the road, at home, at wherever it is that you're at, just completely allows you to be more efficient in any area that you're in. So, my piece and my recommendation would be, if you're starting a business, make sure that your core applications, whether it's productivity suite, whether it's a invoicing platform, whatever it may be, is that you talk to someone who understands the technology and can deploy it in a SaaS-based, a cloud-based environment for you that really truly allows you to do your job from anywhere, right? So if you want to be on vacation in Mexico, have at it. You can still run your business because as long as you have connectivity, you can do it. And I think that's probably over the course of the last 10 years, the opportunities to be able to find a platform that fits your specific business is grown leaps and bounds. There's risks associated with that, but that productivity is probably the single biggest thing that I've seen that could really help.
Yeah. And then, as you said, the ability to work as a small business owner, being able to work anywhere, I think is super, super important because you're not always able to stay at your desk. And one of the things that you did mention is risk. What are some of the risks that a small business can see when it comes to, having it where their network or it's even on the cloud?
More than likely, you're not starting a business in IT. And so your core expertise is probably not information technology, right? And, these organizations make it very easy for you to start up and to deploy these applications. What they don't necessarily do is start from a very secure environment in the first place. And so understanding that, there it's valuable for you to reach out to an IT professional, whether it's a friend of the family, it's your father-in-law, right? Whatever the case may be, and just have them provide a little bit of their expertise to configure and set it up from the very beginning. I tell my team this all the time. If you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you have time to go back and do it again? And especially in a small business, the risk associated with having your system compromised or be unavailable to you, especially if it's a mission critical system, it could make or break a business, right? And so, yeah, you want to be efficient about it, but just I would highly recommend you take a little bit of time and just really talk to a professional in IT and help them architect it for you, right? And then, once it's built on a solid foundation, you're in a much better position to continue to grow.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so when you said talk to a professional, is there do you believe there's a site or anything like that that you would recommend when it comes to someone who's just getting started looking into talking to an IT professional?
Oh, geez. I mean, there's, I know several people who do IT work, both in an organization and on the side, but I'm sure you can go to the yellow pages. Most of my professional contacts are already in, they're not necessarily running their own business, but I do have a few individuals that are friends of mine that do this kind of work as well. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can help facilitate some communication. But I think in most cases, if you're at a point where you're starting a business, you have some connections in the community already, and right, and leveraging those connections, and just talking to people. Hey, do you know somebody? Right? Is there someone you know and trust? The same way most people get jobs is through networking. It's the same way for getting services. Right? We all know, hey, if I need to call a plumber, I'm not just going to go on the yellow pages and find the first one. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, and you may get lucky, you may not. But if it comes as a reference from somebody that has worked with them before, that's golden, right? That's a great, or maybe they come back and say, hey, stay away from this one, right? I worked with this company, and I had a horrible experience, right? Either way, you're getting firsthand feedback, and I would say most people probably already have some of that, but if you don't, you're more than happy to reach out to me, and I'll help you in any way I can.
Understood. And as you said, as a small business owner, I think the importance of being resourceful because, even just getting jobs, I think is very, very important. And when it comes to micro identity, why is it something that business owners should know about?
Wow. Okay, so this is a whole presentation in and of itself. So micro identity, right? It's exactly as it sounds. It is application or computer or system based identity at its smallest level, right? And I was just having this conversation with someone. It's funny that you asked this. That you know, in things continue to get more refined over time, right? Let's talk about, one of the analogies I use is a knife, right? We start with, large knives, very for big projects, right? And as we get better at creating knives and usefulness of it, we get smaller and smaller. They get sharper. They get more refined. We make our way down to a scalpel, right? And then all the way into laser based knives, right? So from something very large all the way down to something that you need a microscope to be able to use, or a magnifying glass to be able to use. Well, we do the same thing in computer technology. In the 90s, there was a big push about personal computers and PCs, and you heard the technology changing very fast. In our industry, we heard about it as like every 18 months it was doubling in capacity, right? So a computer that's the fastest on the market today, in 18 months it's going to be twice as fast or twice as small. And the same thing happens with identity, right? So we started out as identity in an overall business, right? So you had an identity on, associated with that business, and that's how we protected it. That's how we managed it. As anything inside the walls of that business's computer environment was basically open, right? You could do whatever, right? And then we said, oh, wait a minute, some people don't need access to all of our financial information, that they're not, it's not an area that they would work on. So then we said, okay, well, you have access. We compartmentalized your access to a financial system or the rest of the network or the email system, right? And as technology continues to evolve, we get down to, okay, now you have you have an identity in each individual systems. I just talked about automating the creation of that piece of it, right? So now we have it at the system level. Well, what the next piece is, not only are you have identity at a system level, but now it's at an individual connection, right? You can only connect to the system if you're from, if you're inside our network, or you're on a very specific location or a very specific time. And we continue to get smaller and smaller, to where ultimately what we need to get to is identity. And I don't mean just identity as an individual, but I mean identity on a network. So whether or not it's a computer has an identity, a session, so when you log into something, that session has an identity. If we get it all the way down to the individual packet level, then we're talking about micro identity. And if we have the ability to manage and control identity at that level, it gives us the most flexibility, as well as the greatest protection for our organizations. And that's where we're driving. And you see solutions for this all the time that come out in the technology world, about how you can manage identity across multiple platforms, or get the granularity to say exactly what I just said. Hey, if you log in from this location, or if there's something about your login that isn't typical of what it has been for the last 10 times you logged in, it's different somehow. You don't normally access that application. You don't normally access the application from Croatia, right? It's something that's conditional that allows us to say, okay, I don't want to do that, right? But if you don't have micro identity, you can't put those controls. And the lower you can put the controls, the better you're going to be off.
I'm really glad you said that, because I was going to ask you that. So it provides you the access to, be able to, so you can log in, but it's going to, maybe I know sometimes with Google, I'll get a notification, hey, someone's trying to log in here. Is that kind of what you're saying?
To some extent, right? Micro identity allows you to build controls at a smaller level, right? So before it had to be, let's say, at a system, you could log into that system, but it didn't matter whether or not you logged in at 2 o'clock in the morning, or if you logged in from the UK.
Mhm.
Once you had a username and password, you could log in, and you were okay. Well, as identity becomes more granular, we can put more granular controls, which also means we can stack multiple controls. So it gives us a significantly greater ability to do what if scenarios, and say, hey, yes, that's a valid username and password. And yes, it is during the normal working hours, but it's from a location I've never seen you log in from. It may not be a banned location, but it's a location I've never seen you log in from. So guess what? I'm not going to block you, but I'm going to force you to provide another layer of authentication, right? So we're going to do MFA. So like your existence, like example you just gave, hey, someone's trying to log in from here, we're going to force you to do an MFA. You're going to have to give the code. If that wasn't you and you don't give the code, then they don't log in, right? And so it gives us the ability to put those controls at a very micro level as well, which gives us a lot more granularity and flexibility in how we manage the access.
Got it. And then when it comes to the micro identity, do you have any stories that where it protected a business from something possibility?
It all the time. Um, so that example I just gave you with MFA, I've used that in the last 3 companies that I've been in. Give you an example. One of the organizations that I worked in, where I was the head of security for them, we had organization that was trying to log in to one of our systems from a European country. And although we did work with individuals in European countries, and we had our own staff that would travel to them, our policy was, if you're going to travel outside of the local area, you had to let us know when you were traveling to these other countries or these other areas. Otherwise, you would not be able to log in. Right. And so we actually had a very sophisticated attack and one of those organizations that simply because we had that conditional access and set up for MFA, what happened is that the individual said, I'm not trying to log in from Norway. Yes, I go to Norway all the time, but I'm not actually trying to log in from Norway right now. I'm going to deny that. They let us know, and we then could trace back multiple areas where they were kind of poking at our environment. And then so it allowed us, one, it kept our environment safe, and two, it allowed us enough information to be able to take that back to law enforcement agencies and say, and they're like, oh, great, thank you. We've seen this one across other industries as well. This is just it's more information for them to be able to ultimately go after those individuals. And I don't think that they ever have been able to do anything with them yet, but it was affirmation that the work that we put in building these controls actually makes a difference, right? And the other part of it was it's like the utility, right? You don't think about being able to turn the light switch on until you can't turn it on. When you can't turn it on, then you're like, what's going on? What happened? Right? So all those times where, your IT organization has thwarted any attempts to be able to take your system down, you have no idea about it, right? You just see that your system's up and up and up and up. And then the first time it's down, right? And I tell people when we talk about security, the good guys have to be right every single time. We have to be 100% accurate every single time. The bad guys only have to be right once, right? They can fail 99.99% of the time. They make it one time and you're in trouble, right? And so it's definitely been beneficial, at least in my career.
No, I've never actually thought of that like that before. So that's actually very, I guess, beneficial for you to understand that. Because I guess it only takes one time for a hacker or someone to get into something that you're trying to protect. And I had a question and I was going somewhere and I totally forgot it. When it comes to, I guess a big topic on this podcast lately has been AI. Are you seeing more risk with AI when it comes to protecting a business?
Yes, there's tremendous value, right? I started the part of this conversation saying one of the areas that we're working on in our organization is efficiency. And if you can automate, whether it's with scripts or technology or AI, right, that process gets you more efficient. So there's tremendous opportunities in the organization and in most organizations to use artificial intelligence and AI to help with that. I can give you an example of one, right, of a risk. So you have ours is fuel, right? So pricing of fuel is a big conversation for us. It's based on lots of different factors, and so using an AI tool that will help us process more data faster is going to help us be more efficient in our roles and be able to ultimately deliver better product to our customers. In a lot of cases, in terms of pricing, right, we can allow us to be better pricing across the board, right? So if you use AI and it's being based on information in our organization, right? So the price of fuel at an individual station over time, right? If there's a gap in that information, or if there's something about that information that's inaccurate, you're now training an inaccuracy into that AI. Another example, and I was just reading about this one. A researcher went out to 5 or 6 different AI platforms, ChatGPT, Gemini, several of them, and asked, give me a random number between 1 and 40. Every single one of those platforms came back with the exact same number, 27. So if and ultimately what that means is they're reflecting, because statistically, if you ask an individual, give them a random number between 1 and 40, statistically, the number that's going to come up the most is 27, right? People pick that for whatever reason, right? And I don't know the rationale behind how that gets done, but statistically that's already been proven. And so the AI tools in the background are providing information. They're not actually generating a random number. They're generating what the biggest possibility is. The
I'm
biggest
so sorry.
I have 7 grandkids, so they run around all the time. So it's reflecting back the information that it's trained on, and it's trained on what is the most typical number, not an actual random. If you want a random number, go to a random number generator and use something to be able to provide that. But that's the risk in AI, that what it's based on isn't valid.
Got it. And I just want to understand this real quick because as you see, my 5-year-old was coming in here and asking me for something to drink, and I'm like, "Go away." Uh, but so you're saying that the number 27 was actually wrong? Did I catch that correctly?
It's not wrong. It is right in the context that the AI. So when you ask AI in these platforms, and I have to find the article again, to the what it's being trained on is what humans do, right? Not an actual random number, the random number that a human would provide. And since statistically, the number that humans provide more often than any other number in a random number of 1 to 40 is 27, that's what it came back with, not an actual random number. It's interesting, and I haven't tested it because I just read about it yesterday. But it's one of the risks when you talk about AI and using AI in your environment, understanding what it's trained on. They're called LLMs, large language models, and understanding what it's being trained on and whether or not, especially in your own environment, right? I give you an example about fuel. If we're going to train AI with our history, right? It has to be accurate, or anything that we know is inaccurate, we take it out of the model. Give you an example. I have 7 days of information about the price of a fuel. If 2 days I have zero information, right? It didn't update. I didn't date it. It's now saying I've got 7 days of information where it's, you know, 389, 389, 389, 0, 0, 389, 389, right? It's invalid data. And so now it's going to use that incorrect information in its whole. And so you have to understand the limitations of AI and how to implement it in a way that allows you to ensure that the data that it's using is valid, and that you have another mechanism in some way to validate that information. It really goes back to governance and making sure that you build a governance program, especially if you're a larger business and you're really using this for critical systems. You build a governance system and that you understand all the risks associated with it, because there's risks in everything.
Right. And I think the biggest thing that I've also learned is just use it as a resource and not to, as you said, not to fully use it without have to validate it first, which I think is very, very important. I was listening to the radio yesterday and they were telling a story where I guess it made up a whole entire books, and then the writer wrote it into the paper, which they got in trouble for. I don't know if you heard that story.
Right. All over the
But I
place.
know there's all types of stories like that. But thank you for sharing that. Brad, with the way that technology is always changing, is there a way that you are currently staying up to date with technology?
Oh, difficult. I
Very difficult.
talk to a lot of people, right? So, in my career, I've had the opportunity to really meet lots of different professionals. And so, uh, that network of individuals, like I'll call people up and say, I've got this challenge. I'm looking for this kind of, we've used this right now. Do you have any other, like, have you done something in this environment? Have you done a test with something? Have you looked at something different? Like, what other options have you seen? Have you heard about? I do a lot of reading, right? If it's news snippets, if it's listening to the radio, or industry news is a big factor for us because it's more specific to the industry, the industry that we're in. So I do a lot of that piece of it. But really, I think the biggest piece is associations, like other professional network associations, and you get lots of data from them, reading that documentation and then just talking to people, right? That everyone has a different experience and different angles for different things. I have a friend of mine who's a CIO for a professional NHL team. And, you know, when he's looking for technology to put in their arena, right? It's based on the criteria that's, focused for them. But that same technology may be applicable to us in some way, shape, or form, right? And so having conversations about the different projects and different things that other professionals are doing always gives me different ideas about how to utilize technology in a different way, and maybe being able to apply that technology to a problem that we may have that's not directly related. But I'm like, okay, wait a minute. If we try it this way, maybe that will help us solve this problem, right? And so that's probably the biggest one. Like, build that network, get out to those associations. There's several of them in town in Las Vegas. If you're a leader in Las Vegas, especially in the security world, there's a group of CISOs that meet all the time there. There's multiple other technology groups that if you're a director or leader or above, and then there's a bunch of technical ones as well, right? If you're an individual contributor on the technical side right now in your career, there's plenty of organizations there to be a part of. So reach out to those organizations, make connections with other professionals. You're just leveraging their experience for you. Before our conversation started, I was talking to your assistant for a minute, and we were talking a little bit about some of the history and some of the things that we've done. Well, I spent many years working for the military, and the military uses a term called force multiplier, right? This is an individual's force multiplier. You don't have to have all the experiences. If you know people who have had different experiences, they can very quickly provide some of that experience to you. Like, hey, I've done this and it doesn't work, don't try it, right? Or this really works for us. And you can get a lot of information very quickly in those kind of scenarios. So build that network.
Yes. As you said or mentioned earlier, the importance of being resourceful. I think that's the number one thing that I think is super, super important. You did mention the news. You said you mentioned books. Is there any particular books that you're currently reading or possibly read in the past that made a huge difference?
you know I, the books I read don't tend to be technology based books. They tend to be leadership ones. So I literally just got a new book from General Crystal about integrity. So I'm reading through that book and I really enjoy it. I I, I tend to lean towards military leaders. That's just kind of my passion. Is, my dad was in the military. I spent many years working for the military, so it's near and dear to my heart. I had an opportunity very early in my career to meet General Colin Powell, and an incredible individual and an incredible leader. And so on my computer at my office is his 13 steps of leadership, like printed out and taped to the side of my thing. So those are important to me. I think if I was earlier in my career, I would, be looking at more of the technical books, some of the certifications and things that are out there and the books associated with that. But trade magazines, right? That's probably the other big one that's out there. Yeah, I think that's probably where I tend to go to.
Oh, that's awesome. I know I'm right there with you with reading leadership books. What was the leadership book that you mentioned?
Oh, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I literally just got it. It's literally just he just sent it out. I'm not going to remember the name of it right now. It's,
Terrified.
it's a long name. I'll shoot it to you in email afterwards if you want to post it.
Yeah, no, that would be perfect. And if our audience, Brad, is looking to connect, how do they do that?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. So I'm listed on LinkedIn. Extension is B Sexton one. Right. So it's, I think, linkedin.com/en/B Sexton one, I think is what it comes down to. But you'll see me. It's pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message, tag me, whatever case. If I can help you in some way, I will.
Awesome. And is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we go?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Brad. We've really enjoyed the conversation today.